Can't find love? That day is over. With just 8 numbers, we can reveal all your secrets to sex and love. We call it Secrets of Birthdays, the Love and Lust Report. Find out the secret to your heart at secretsofbirthdays.com. Hello, my fellow soul gardeners, and welcome now to Astro 102, Episode 2. And we are talking about the houses. The houses, those imaginary little pie-shaped things that go around the clock. Last week we talked about the first house, whose natural ruler is Aries, and how it opposed the 7th house, whose natural ruler is Libra. We're going to go around the clock. I think that's the best way to do it. Today we're going to open with the 2nd house, whose natural ruler is Taurus, and opposing the 2nd house, the 8th house, whose natural ruler is Scorpio. Let's start with Taurus. Taurus is all about our value system. Okay? Tauruses rule values. Tauruses understand what's valuable in the world. Tauruses know how to make value. That's why Tauruses are so productive. Value turns into productivity, right? So when we feel valuable, we can be productive with that value, and then we can draw in abundance, which is money. The 2nd house is often associated with money, but so is the 8th, and I'll talk about that in a couple minutes and why and how that happens. So people who have their sun in the 2nd house are people who know their self-confidence. They're born with natural self-confidence. It's not a problem for them to go out there and do something with their charisma, with any part of their talents. They have no problems investing themselves into the world, okay? Also with the sun in the 2nd house, these people tend to have no money problems. That's what I find. I had a client recently who basically was, inherited a ton of money from their family, and so they never had to worry about working. He spends his life working on spirituality instead. So 2nd house, when the sun's in the 2nd house, it's a good sign that there's going to be money. My son has Jupiter in the 2nd, actually, and when I saw that when he was born, I was like, woohoo, he's going to inherit money. That means I'm going to make money. So I was very excited about that. So some of the 2nd house people often are celebrity important people too, because they can catapult that value out into the world and get something from it. So a good example of a celebrity with the sun in the 2nd house is Oprah Winfrey. That's right, Oprah Winfrey. Oprah Winfrey's sun is in the 2nd house. Now, we all know that girl is wealthy, but she's also incredibly self-confident. From the first day that she got on camera, she just did it. She just put it out there. And she not just did it, but she turned it into an empire, right? An empire that is, frankly, untouchable. I think she's still the highest paid woman on the planet. So that's a great example. So if your sun's in the 2nd house, you know your value, you're a master of values, and sometimes you draw in people who have no values. And that's because the universe is bringing to you students that need to learn what value really is. Now the 8th house, which is the opposite, is the house of Scorpio, okay? And Scorpio is all about boundaries, trust and intimacy, and surrender. Surrender is really what it's about. In fact, I always call the 8th house the house of material loss, okay? When we surrender, when we give up the material in hopes for something to be returned. This is why inheritance falls under the 8th house, because you surrender to grandpa's fortune. So money can come through the 8th and money can come through the 2nd. It doesn't really matter. The 8th house is also the house of sex and death and kind of the underworld, right? Now what's interesting is, now if you look at these two houses and how they are opposing each other, the 8th house is death and surrender. Taurus, the 2nd house, is all about let's build something. So between Taurus and Scorpio, that's the line between life and death, okay? Taurus and Scorpio is the line between life and death, because when we die, we regenerate. And remember from the planets in Astro 101, I talked about the Earth, the 2nd house ruler, is the opposite of Pluto. And between Earth and Pluto, you've got really the whole galaxy, right? Everything before Earth, remember, is our pre-manifested vibration. Once we're on Earth, we're manifested, and then Pluto is the last end of the line. So people with the sun in the 8th house are very interesting people. They are masters of trust and intimacy. They're masters of boundaries. They tend to be people that naturally gain the trust of others. So whenever I have a sun in the 8th client, I say to them, I bet you hear all the time, I can't believe I'm telling you this, but sun in the 8th house people always gain the trust and respect of people instantly. And I think it's because sun in the 8th people kind of vibrate on that Scorpio plane. Remember, Scorpio is the line between life and death, and I think people feel that the Sun 8th people kind of have this vibration in the death arena, and so they feel safe. They feel like someone's going to catch them if they go too far. So Sun 8th people are ideally people that help people transform. That's why people give you their trust, because they trust you to help them get past something, to transform, to die and be reborn. Sun in the 8th house people, in my experience with my clients, tend to be people who are in very powerful positions of either transformation or even of owning and running material wealth. So I'll look and see Sun in the 8th, and it'll be a huge producer in Hollywood. We'll have the Sun in the 8th. Yeah, the movie studio's trusting him or her with all this money to go make a product. I'll find CEOs with Sun in the 8th house. Sometimes I'll find wives or husbands of people of very important nature with Sun in the 8th house. In other words, like the First Lady. I wouldn't be surprised. I haven't run all the First Ladies' chart, but I bet you one of them has the Sun in the 8th, because they are part of a transformation, and they are really also people that bring the underworld up. The Sun in the 8th house people kind of have this desire to pull up what's underneath. You know, they want to expose the taboos and expose the mysteries of the planet. So Sun in the 8th house people also tend to have, because of this, an easy connection to ghosts and the paranormal and anything that's kind of hiding under the seams. So Sun 8th people are actually really interesting people. They're usually totally supported by the universe, but don't necessarily have a job on their own. And my famous example for Sun 8th is Mother Teresa. Mother Teresa, who was a Virgo. What a great example of Sun in the 8th house. Obviously incredibly powerful in the world. Obviously looking at the taboo. This woman gave compassion to untouchables on the planet. And as a Virgo healer, she helped to transform people and their sicknesses and whatnot. She's one of the most beautiful examples of the potential of Sun in the 8th house. So between the 8th house death and the 2nd house of basically birth, that's what the Taurus birth stuff all the time, that's why they're the producers, you have the spectrum between manifestation and death, really. And the Sun seconds are really good manifestors of material, manifestors of anything. The 8th house people help people let something die and be reborn. So once again, you can look at other planets here. Jupiter in the 2nd would indicate that you're going to have great fortune at producing something, and you're probably going to have no money problems your entire life. Jupiter in the 8th actually is that you're very much your fortune is in helping people transform. All right, and also I have to say, a lot of times with Sun in the 8th, these are people who are phenomenal in sexual relations and often tend to be sexual healers too. So Sun in the 8th people, or Jupiter in the 8th, means that you might draw on sexually abandoned people. You may draw on people who have boundaries that have gone too far. Pluto, this is the last planet I'll talk about here. Pluto in the 2nd means that basically you have soul capital issues. You don't understand your worth, and therefore you might have money problems, you might have productivity problems. You're going to have to learn your worth from the ground up. Pluto in the 8th says that you really don't understand boundaries whatsoever, at least you're born that way. One condition of Pluto 8 I often find is the client will have had a parent die at a young age, okay? So therefore they're always questioning, what's on the other side? Is mom or dad on the other side? It forces them to get into situations where they have to understand and have clear boundaries. And Pluto in the 8th, of course, is in its home space there, because Pluto rules Scorpio, and Scorpio's the 8th house ruler. So Pluto in the 8th is kind of tough. Also, as people have ghost phenomenon, things like that, and obviously people who have sexual issues. So Pluto's kind of a heavy planet, but I wanted to bring it up. Okay, well that concludes episode 2 of Astro 102. I hope it was great for you. It was great for me. And I'll be back next week, of course, with the next topic, which will be the 3rd and 9th house. I'll see you then. Why does every guy cheat on you? Trust me, I know. How come girls always call you their friend? I can tell you. We'll talk about your strengths, and we'll talk about emotions. Secrets of Birthdays, now live for purchase. Check out yours at secretsofbirthdays.com.